All right, so I'm gonna go ahead and get started. Hello, greetings to all of you. This is Tiffany coming through live in effect. So today I'm going to be dealing with the West African series part 3, talking about the Yoruba tribe in the diaspora. So what is the diaspora? The diasporas will be the Americas, such as North America, South America, Latin America, or Central America. Okay. The reason why I doing this subject, as we all know, there's a lot that's going on in Nigeria. There's the issue regarding to the police brutality out there and the Nigerian soldiers killing innocent people. So that's been taking place within this past week or so. And so I want to get into this because what many of us don't know or realize that when we take those ancestry tests, if you ever took them, you will come to find out that majority of us have ancestry that comes from Nigeria. Now, Nigeria was much bigger than the size that it is today. Okay? So Nigeria was much bigger than what it is today. All right. So a lot of our ancestry come from that region. And I think that's one of the most important thing because we also got to realize that there were a lot of tribes that came from the region as well. And one of those tribes that happened to be brought in the diaspora was the Yoruba tribe. And so the Yoruba tribe is not only very popular in the Caribbean and South America, but it has some popularity in North America as well. And a lot of people practice into the religion, the culture of the Yoruba, which such as Voodoo and Ifa, all that good stuff. So a lot of people has to incorporate into that. So I think that it's only very necessary for me to like go into the details about it and look at some origins and history. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to show some sources and I'm just going to make this a part 1 because I will continue where I left off if I don't get through or get finished. So, all right. So the first source I want to present is called the Yoruba Americans. So yeah, there were people who were American that was of the Yoruba descent. All right. So as you can see, I'm posting up the information right here. All right. So here on the Yoruba Americans are Americans of Yoruba descent. So for those of you who may not know what the Yoruba people are, let's go right here. As you can see, the Yoruba people are an ethnic group that inhabits Western Africa, mainly Nigeria, Benin, Togo, and parts of Ghana. The Yoruba constitute around 47 million people worldwide. The vast majority of this population is from Nigeria, where the Yoruba make up 21% of the country's population, making them one of the largest ethnic groups in Africa. Most Yoruba people speak the Yoruba language, which is the Niger-Congo language with the largest number of native speakers. All right. And then right here it says the Yoruba shares borders with the very closely related Curry, if I'm saying it right, is Curry to the southeast in the northern west Niger Delta, who are ancestrally related to Yoruba, choose to maintain a distinct cultural identity. Bariba to the north in Benin and Nigeria, the Nupe also to the north, and the Ibira to the northeast in central Nigeria. To the east are the Edo, Isan, and Afami groups in mid-western Nigeria. Adjacent to the Ibira and Edo groups are the related Agala people found in the northeast on the left bank of the Niger River. To the southwest are the Jibe speaking Mahi, Gonfong, and Iwe, who border Yoruba communities in Benin and Togo. Significant Yoruba population in other West African countries can be found in Ghana, Benin, Ivory Coast, and Sierra Leone. The Yoruba diaspora, right, consists of two main groupings. First were the Yoruba dispersing through Atlantic slave trade, mainly to the Western Hemisphere, and the second wave includes relatively recent migrants, the majority of which moved to the United Kingdom and the United States after the major economic and political changes in the 1960s and the 1930s. All right. And so, again, let's look at the Yoruba diaspora. Okay. So let's go back. All right, so that's a little information about the Yoruba people that I wanted to share. And then I'm going to go into the concept about the Yoruba people in the Atlantic slave trade. But let's go ahead and read on. Anyhow, the first Yoruba people who arrived in the United States were imported as slaves from Nigeria and Benin during the Atlantic slave trade. This ethnicity of the slaves were one of the main origins of present-day Nigerians who arrived to the United States, along with the Igbo. In addition, native slaves of current Benin hailed from people such as Nago, Yoruba subgroup, although exported mainly by Spanish when Louisiana was Spanish, Iwe, Fon, and Gin. Many of the slaves imported to the modern United States from Benin were sold by the king of Dahomey in Wada. The slaves brought with them their cultural practices, languages, and cuisine, religious beliefs rooted in spirit and ancestor worship, which is like ancestor veneration. So the manners of the Yoruba, Fon, and Gen and Iwe of Benin were key elements of Louisiana voodoo. Okay, you heard that, of Louisiana voodoo. Also, Haitians who migrated to Louisiana in the late 19th century and also contribute to voodoo on this state have the Yoruba and Iwe as their main origins. The Yoruba and some northern Nigerian ethnic groups had tribal facial identification marks, which they call it scarification. These could have assist a returning slave in relocating his or her ethnic group, but few slaves escaped the colonies. In the colonies, masters tried to dissuade the practice of tribal customs. They also sometimes mixed people of different ethnic groups to make it more difficult for them to communicate and bond together in rebellion. After the slavery abolition in 1865, many modern Nigerian immigrants have come to the United States to pursue educational opportunities in undergrad and postgraduate institutions. This was possible because of the 1960s and 1970s at the Biafra War. Nigeria's government funded scholarship for Nigerian students, and many of them were admitted to American universities. While this was happening, there were several military coups and brief periods of civilian rule. All this caused many Nigerians to immigrate. Most of these Nigerian immigrants are of Yoruba, Igbo, and Abibo origins. Today, most African Americans, I want y'all to listen to me, most African Americans share ancestry with the Yoruba people. So right here, okay. So right there, that's a fact. The information is factual. Okay. So now let's go down to the Yoruba people in the transatlantic slave trade. All right. Check this out. It says Yoruba people among the most heavy target contribute significant cultural and ethnic, cultural and economic influence upon the Atlantic slave trade during its run from approximately 1400 to 1900 CE. Oyo Empire. From 1400 onward, the Oyo Empire imperial success made the Yoruba language a lingua franca, almost to the shores of the Volta. Towards the end of the 18th century, the Oyo army was neglected as there was less need to conquer. Instead, Oyo directed more effort towards trading and acting as a middleman for both the trans-Saharan and transatlantic slave trade. Europeans bringing salt arrived in Oyo during the reign of King Obalokun, thanks to its domination of the coast. Oyo merchants were able to trade with Europeans at Porto Novo and Wada. Here, the Oyo Empire's captives and criminals were sold to Dutch and Portuguese buyers. All right. Then goes into cultural influences. In addition to the influences on slavery and later Afro-American cuisine and language, the importation of Yoruba culture was heavily evidenced in such manifestation of Yoruba religions as Santeria, Kandabale, Kitu, and other traditional spiritualities. All right, and here's the sources right here at the bottom. All right, so I'm going to show a few more information, and whatever I don't get through, I just have to do it later on. All right. So the first one I want to show to back up my argument or to back up this information from p.1 is called the Yoruba Diaspora in the Atlantic World. The Yoruba Diaspora in the Atlantic World. All right. So what I'm going to do is I'm gonna read real quick. All right, so what I want to do is I'm going to show a source on here. All right, so this is what I want to read. Okay. It says the Yoruba diaspora to the Americas was rooted in the experience of slave trade, but the ongoing process of making and establishing connection with an ancestral homeland continued long after the abolition of slavery. People of Yoruba descent made an ongoing and conscious effort to define themselves in both local and global terms born of diasporic connection. Historian, anthropologists, and sociologists have long recognized the important roles of the family as a crucial institution in creating and passing on cultural traits. The Yoruba in the diaspora are no exception. Kevin Roberts examines how kinship, family, and gender roles were preserved and transformed in the Atlantic world during slavery by surveying the major destination of the Yoruba explored by other authors in this volume, namely Brazil, the Caribbean, and Sierra Leone. Robert demonstrates how the Yoruba were able to continue and alter form their central practice of extended family, fictive kinship, and either gender role. The Yoruba family thus served as an essential institution for cultural transfer and creation in developing strategy to survive New World enslavement. All right. Then we're going to skip on to the next page and see what they're talking about. All right, and it says one of the singular and unique features of the Yoruba diaspora in the Atlantic world that distinguish it from other diaspora of African cultural and ethnic groups was the large return migration from Cuba, Brazil, Sierra Leone, and other regions of the Americas. The patterns were especially strong in the 19th century, but Robin Law points to examples from the 17th and 18th century that reveal an elaborate network of trade and political relations which allow for transatlantic migration in both directions. Historians have traditionally minimized the return migration in the overall scope of the diaspora, focused instead on African origins and American destination. Important insights into the Yoruba experience in the Americas and Africa can be learned from studying those who desire to return to an ancestral homeland after emancipation. As a result of their experience in the diaspora, many of the returnees maintain a separate identity, such as the Creole, whom C. McBailey filed exams in his chapter on their return to West Africa. Many of the former slaves employed their broad diasporic identity rather than a firm-rooted local identity to facilitate their role as merchants and traders. Agreeing with Laurent Martyrs called that the Yoruba must be conceptualized as a transatlantic nation. Both Law and Fowle demonstrate that the liberated slaves who returned to West Africa decisively contribute to the fashioning of Yoruba national identity. All right. So it goes on to a lot of information here, and this comes from the Yoruba diaspora in the Atlantic world. All right, and then I have another source of information to present. All right, so this source is called Orisha, Yoruba God and Spiritual Identity in Africa and the Diaspora. All right. So it goes into the cultural practices that is particularly used in this country. All right, so chapter 1. Well, is it chapter 1? No, it's a public, it's one. Well, it's a book, but it's some sources that's coming from the book. So I don't know what chapter this is, but anyways, Yoruba diasporic performance, the case for a spiritual and aesthetically based diaspora. And it says, Yoruba land of southwestern Nigeria has yielded a vibrant diaspora that extend and re-image Yoruba spirituality to suit the particular region where New World Yoruba resides. The flourishing reconstruction of Yoruba, particularly in the United States, the Caribbean, and South America, marks the simultaneous development of distinctive Yoruba spiritual practice, along with the acknowledgement of a West African Yoruba root. In each region, people have mapped out a practice that responds to the specific socio-political realities they experience, to the natural world with which they live, and to other cultures and peoples with whom they share time and space. The very concept of Ile Ifa as the place of creation signals the making of a diaspora, as suggested by the first epigraph that opens this essay. Yoruba land spawned new tradition in new location, and like the dawning of a new day, these locations are ripe with potential. And it goes on to say, understand Ile Ifa as the site of creation and subsequent diaspora opens the space for an examination of artistic creation as a primary artifact of the Yoruba diaspora. The relocation and adaptation of culture that characterize a diaspora is clearly discernible in artistic production. Indeed, the aesthetic the aesthetic expressed through spiritual practice have served as a major conduit for spreading and perpetuating the Yoruba diaspora. This essay will examine the inclusion of Orisha and resistance as two primary features of Yoruba diasporic performance by referencing three plays of the Yoruba diaspora. Shay Youngblood's African American shaking the mess out of misery. Pepe Carlos, was it Pepe Corrales, Cuban Shango de Ima, and Abidas do Nascimentos, Brazilian Sortele the Second, Zombie Returns. Referencing these plays as a way of understanding Yoruba diaspora reveals the way in which Yoruba is less about a place and a people than it is about a base knowledge, a set of similar cultural and spiritual experiences, and facility with spiritual rights. Authenticity then might be fruitfully fashioned as what one knows and does, and not where one is from and what one's bloodline may be. The virtue is considering authenticity as embodied knowledge rather than as location and biological lineage. Is that this allow for the political and spiritual galvanizing of Yoruba around the world, thereby broadening and strengthening the very idea of Yorubaness, refigurating authenticity as it relates to a Yoruba diaspora, also avoids the exceptionalizing impulses of earlier notion of an African diaspora that were based first on race and later on identifiable cultural retentions. The Yoruba diaspora, as I discussed in this essay, as embodied knowledge dispersed around the world, primarily in the U.S., the Caribbean, and South America, complicates and challenges a Yoruba diaspora based on race and thrives on the adaptation of spiritual rights rather than the identification of cultural retention that anxiously trace back to a place of origin. All right, so that is this source right here. The name of the book is Orisha, Yoruba Gods and Spiritual Identity in African and the Diaspora by Tonye Folola and Anne Genovia. All right. And it was written in 2005. Okay, so that'll be all for today. With that being said, I will do part 2 later and continue on with more information. Until then, peace out. All right.